Love them or loathe them, being a pundit is a challenging task, and in particular, an F1 pundit with fierce rivalry in the paddock. One wrong word or phrase can lead fans of a specific team to turn against you and, in extreme circumstances, teams to boycott the broadcaster altogether. F1 fans have long thought that Sky F1 has a particular bias towards specific teams, drivers, and nationalities. Stick around as we expose if Sky F1 has a bias towards specific teams and drivers. Sky F1 dominates the F1 broadcasting scene. If you watch F1, it's more than likely that you've seen someone from the Sky F1 team, whether it be Ted Kravitz, Naomi Schiff, or Martin Brundle. As tough as being a pundit is, it also comes with a generous pay package, with the latest news reporting that Martin Brundle is worth a reported $100 million and drives a range of evocative cars, from an Aston Martin DBS to a Porsche Cayenne 4.2 V8 diesel. Not bad to report on a sport you love and have the occasional conversation with a celebrity on your grid walk. And it's safe to assume that all pundits on Sky Sports will be on big packages, from Natalie Pinkham to David Croft and all in between. As an F1 fan, it's not much to ask for fair commentary that highlights all teams on the grid and delivers unbiased opinions. But in this current era of sport and media, that is hard to come by, as it's most likely that you will somehow annoy someone. Whether it be Lewis fans or Max fans, both sets of supporters are fiercely loyal to their respective drivers. With all that being said, there is a strong feeling among F1 fans that Sky F1 has a solid British bias in its coverage of F1. Fernando Alonso also pointed out that he is viewed as the bad guy in F1 due to British bias. It seemed like I was the bad guy in F1 when fighting British guys. When I see what Verstappen gets with some questions, I understand his position, said Alonso. But is Sky British biased? Let's take a deep dive into this. Sky pays a princely sum for the exclusive rights to F1. The idea would be to cater to all audiences. Still, this only sometimes seems to be the case, with Karen Chandhok not helping the British broadcaster's case with his most recent statement about Red Bull, with the presenter having this to say on Red Bull's popularity in Britain. It's quite funny because we were talking about this in Abu Dhabi last year. When I say us, I was talking with the people at Red Bull and how bizarrely they'd made themselves more unpopular with the British fans despite winning the last 2 world championships and dominating a season. I don't know, I think there is a variety of reasons. If you are a Mercedes and a Lewis fan, the finish in 2021 was not ideal, but for Karen to highlight that this doesn't sit well with the British public makes you wonder where the loyalty of the pundit lies. And he dug himself into a further hole by saying that Red Bull needs a British driver to be popular in the country. Obviously, they don't have a British driver, and certainly in this country there was very much a feeling that it was them against Lewis. And then you add George, and Mercedes have got 2 Brits in that team. I think that the old adage of apart from Ferrari, the fans still gravitate more towards a driver than a team is still true. Yes, you have McLaren fans and Mercedes fans, but they are more Lando fans or George or Lewis fans. And certainly in this country, Red Bull aren't as popular. I think their popularity has gone down. Whether that's a lingering effect of 2021 and Abu Dhabi, I don't know, the F1 pundit told Autosport. It's worth pointing out that Red Bull boycotted Sky Sports at the Mexico GP in 2022 after Red Bull perceived a vendetta from Sky F1 against the team. Statements such as the above do not help Sky F1's case. Now, when dealing with perspective, it is challenging to gather whether there is a direct bias from Sky. People's opinions are subjective rather than objective, but one thing that does lend to more accurate analysis is the numbers around the matter. Motorsport Broadcasting surveyed this matter, and the numbers are rather interesting. If you were to prove that Sky F1 had a bias, you would expect the driver and team to feature the most to be British. Still, according to the numbers, this is not the case, with the most featured driver being Ferrari's Charles Leclerc, with the Ferrari driver featuring 13.7% of the time, as opposed to Hamilton's 11.6% in the last season. But is this enough to say Sky is not British biased? Probably not, but when you look further into the numbers, British drivers featured 31%, and 3 of the top 5 all being British: Lando, George and Hamilton. Even Max winning last season's championship could not get him more airtime than Lewis Hamilton, with the Brit beating the Dutch driver by 0.04 percentage points. So fine, looking at the drivers' numbers, there does look to be a bias towards British drivers, But what about team principals? The leading team principal was also British. Yep, you guessed it right, it was Christian Horner, who was featured the most on Sky. The Red Bull man featured 33.7%, which is considerably more than second place, who was Toto Wolff. The Austrian featured 18.2% on Sky. However, it's difficult to say if there is a bias in team principals, as one is an Englishman in an Austrian team and the other is an Austrian in an English team. As both have English links, you could say there is a bias towards English-based personnel amongst the team principals. And finally, which team was featured the most? That award goes to Red Bull, with the Austrian-based team featuring 21.8% compared to Mercedes at 20.9%. A pretty close call when it comes to which team features the most. Now, when looking at numbers, you must also consider why they are so high. Sky's main objective is to bring us the best entertainment and the most up-to-date news from around the F1 world and provide an in-depth analysis of all of it. Their target market will be based on where most of their audience is. When looking at the numbers, it's obvious why Red Bull and Horner were the most prominent in Sky's package for F1 in 2022. Red Bull not only dominated the championship, but also had to deal with the backlash of Abu Dhabi, which dominated most of the 2022 preseason, the budget cap breach, and the boycott of Sky Sports. All three events drew much attention globally, with Horner being the center of it all. The harsh reality of F1 is that the top three teams are dominant, not only on the track but also in supporters, with many fans who watch Sky F1 tuning in to see Mercedes, Red Bull, or Ferrari. The stats show that Sky is 8 times more likely to show the top 3 teams versus the bottom 3 teams, equating to 59.3% of the airtime. However, looking at all of the data, it still doesn't explain why the British drivers dominated Sky's F1 package. As of the top 3 teams, there are only 2 British drivers. Lando Norris featured twice more than Perez and Sainz. In this sense, there does appear to be some bias with Lewis, who had a dismal season, still beating Verstappen and Russell to broadcast time. You also need to consider who Sky is broadcasting to. It's easy to forget they are a British-based broadcasting company, and that is who its audience is. This likely lends to why they have a British bias. But they have tried to extend their package, with Leclerc getting a segment before Monaco and Perez being offered the same before Mexico. F1 has grown exponentially in the last few years, with the sport attracting interest from all over the world and a growing base of fans in the USA. Sky broadcasts the USA through its partnership with ESPN. We'll need to consider how it can speak to both audiences, not just the British audience. And as well as the audience is growing, Sky now has 22 races to work with in 2023, and it would be great to have wide-ranging interviews from all drivers. An onus on some lesser race car drivers may just go down a treat with the viewers. Sky could do several things to cater to a broader audience, and we will have to see if they implement them in the current season. Do you think Sky F1 is biased? Comment below.